"There's no room for your kids on the New Year cruise," my fiancée said. Her son added, "Tickets are $2,200 each, so Happy New Year at home." I said, "I know, kid. I bought every single ticket." They posted family photos without us. When the ship left, and they saw me and my kids waving from the deck, I just smiled. "Happy New Year. Looks like you're the ones staying home. There's no room for your kids on the New Year cruise." My fiancé said it with a smile. Not a mean smile. That's the thing that gets me every time I replay it. A practical smile. A smile that said, "This is just logistics, Dominic. Don't make it weird." Like she was telling me, the dry cleaning was ready. Like she hadn't just informed me that my children, my 9-year-old daughter and my 12-year-old son, were not on the guest list for a New Year's Eve cruise that I had, quietly, in the background, been subsidizing for the better part of the year. There's just no room. The reservation's already set. And then Crispin, her 17-year-old, who had been living in my house, eating food I bought, driving a car whose payment came out of my account, looked me dead in the eye and said, "Tickets are $2,200 each, so Happy New Year at home. $2,200 per person." He said it the way you'd say, "The milk's almost out." Casual. Tossed off. Like he was doing me a favor by explaining the economics of a decision he had no part in making and $0 in funding. I didn't say anything. Ebertha Waverly. She's 9. She was sitting at the kitchen table with a homemade New Year's Eve crown she'd constructed out of construction paper, gold glitter, and about 3 weeks of pure, uncomplicated hope. And I thought, okay, but I'm getting way ahead of myself. Let me take you all the way back, because you need the full picture. You need to understand what 2.5 years of quietly, patiently, telling yourself it's temporary actually looks like from the inside. Because from the inside, it doesn't feel like anything. It feels like Tuesday. And then one Tuesday, your 9-year-old is holding a paper crown, and you realize about 14 Tuesdays too late that you have been the only one keeping this thing afloat. And nobody in the boat ever thought to say thank you. And in fact, several people in the boat have recently started complaining about the rowing. My name is Dominic Calloway. I'm 37 years old. I'm an optometrist. I have my own practice, Calloway Vision, on Blue Ridge Road in Raleigh, North Carolina. Been there for 8 years. I built it from the ground up. 1 exam chair, 1 front desk person, a lease I was terrified to sign. Now I've got 3 chairs, 2 part-time techs, a full-time office manager named Precious, who has been running my schedule since year 2, and who, for the record, knew before I did that this whole situation was going to go sideways. She told me, directly, I did not listen. I regret this. I do well. Not second home in the Outer Banks. Well, not yet. But comfortable. Stable. The kind of stable that took a decade to build, and that I am genuinely proud of, even though nobody in my fiancé's family ever seemed particularly interested in how it got built. They were very interested in the part where it was available. I have 2 kids from my first marriage. Waverly, 9. She is small and fast and has opinions about everything, including the correct way to stack pancakes. And she is the great love of my life. And my son, Oleander, we call him Ollie. He introduced himself as Oleander once in 2nd grade and has been mortified about it since. He's 12, and he's in the phase where everything I say is slightly embarrassing. But sometimes, when he doesn't know I'm looking, he'll laugh at something I said 10 minutes ago. I count that. Their mother is Genevieve. We divorced 4 years ago. It was mutual, it was sad, it was handled like adults, and we co-parent well. She's remarried now. Nice guy. Ollie says he's fine. From Ollie, that's a strong endorsement. No drama between us. We are the boring divorced couple that makes messy divorced couples furious just by existing. 2.5 years ago, I met Margot Pemberton at a charity auction. She was there with a colleague. I was there with Alistair, my best friend. A dentist. Yes, we've made every possible optometrist, dentist joke. We're done with them. And she was the most poised person in the room. That's the word I kept coming back to. Poised. Like she'd already considered every angle of every situation and made peace with all of them. I found that enormously attractive. I now understand it differently. She's a pharmaceutical rep, sharp, driven, always dressed like she's about to present to a board of directors. She has 2 kids, Crispin, who was 15 when we met, and Thessaly, who was 12. Smart kids. Crispin plays football with genuine talent and a confidence level that I eventually had to conclude was not entirely earned. Thessaly is quieter, watches everything, keeps her thoughts close. I liked Thessaly from the start. I had more complicated feelings about Crispin, which I kept to myself because that's what you do. We fell into each other fast. Too fast. I know that now. But I was lonely in a way I hadn't admitted to myself, and she was certain in a way that felt like safety. And that combination will get you every time. 6 months in, she moved in. My house, my mortgage, my spare room became Crispin's room. My guest bathroom became Thessaly's bathroom, with approximately 47 hair products in it that I was specifically not allowed to move. My kitchen became a house kitchen, which is different from a bachelor kitchen in ways I cannot fully describe, but involved a lot more commentary about my grocery choices. 8 months in, there was a ring conversation. Not me down on one me. We talked about it first, which I actually prefer, very sensible. And then, yes, a proper proposal, a ring she helped pick out, a yes. And then something shifted, not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually, like a very slow leak, the nature of what I was in that house began to change. I need you to understand the numbers, because the numbers are the story. The mortgage on my house, mine, Margot did not contribute to this, and we agreed early that this was fine. She'd cover groceries and utilities, while we figured out the longer-term plan. She covered groceries and utilities for about 11 weeks. After that, I'm not entirely sure what happened. I'd find myself at Harris Teeter at 7:30 p.m. because I'd realized there was no dinner plate. I'd find myself paying the Duke energy bill at midnight because it was due tomorrow and she'd said, "I've got it," 4 days ago. I never made a bit production of this. I just paid. And every time I paid, I told myself, we're building something. This is an investment. The car. Crispin turned 16. He needed a car. That's fair. That's a normal American teenage situation. And I was not opposed to helping. But the car that Margot found, after what she described as a lot of research, was a 22 Honda Pilot with 34,000 miles on it and a monthly payment of $689. And somehow, I still to this day cannot reconstruct exactly the sequence of events that led to this. That payment became mine. I think what happened is I agreed to help get him started, and help became a noun instead of a verb. $689 a month for a car I don't drive. To a teenager who used it primarily to go to Chick-fil-A, and on weekends, to see a girlfriend I was not introduced to until month 4. Crispin's football camp, summer before junior year. $1,400. I paid it. Margot said, with complete sincerity, "I'll pay you back when my commission check hits." The commission check, based on all available evidence, went to something else. I did not ask what. I nodded when she thanked me, and I told myself, this is what families do. Thessaly's braces, $12,000, split over a payment plan on my dental insurance. Alistair actually did the work at a discount, because he's Alistair. Margot cried when she thanked me. Real tears. I believed them. I still think they were real. I just also think real tears and accountability can coexist. And in this case, only one of them showed up. My kids. Waverly needed new glasses twice. I am an optometrist, so that one I handled myself, which is the one financial convenience of my specific profession. Ollie's bike got stolen from our front yard. $230. New bike. Margot said, "Oh, that's terrible. We should get him a new one." We did. I did. With my debit card. While she was standing next to me, I don't know if she noticed. I didn't say anything. Here's the thing nobody tell you about being the quiet financial foundation of a household. It's not one big moment. It's not a dramatic ask. It's 1,000 small, frictionless moments where paying is easier than the conversation that not paying would require. And the longer you go without having the conversation, the more impossible the conversation becomes. Because now you're not just talking about groceries. You're talking about 18 months of groceries. And that's a different conversation. One I kept not having. I kept telling myself it was temporary. That's what I told Alistair when I finally talked to him about it, about 8 months in. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Dominic, has anyone in that house ever said it was temporary?" And I thought about it. And no, no one had ever used that word. That was my word. I've been having a conversation with myself. Nobody told me that if you always say yes, people stop seeing it as generosity. It stops being a gift. It becomes load-bearing. And the moment it becomes load-bearing, you can't remove it without the whole structure complaining about the structural engineer. The cruise idea originated with Cordelia Pemberton, Margot's mother, 71 years old, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, in a way that suggests she has never purchased anything from a store that has a parking lot. Cordelia has an opinion about everything, and delivers those opinions in a tone that implies she's doing you a favor by sharing them. In 2.5 years, she asked me exactly one question about my life that wasn't actually a comment in question for her. The one genuine question was, "Are you from Raleigh originally?" When I said no, she said, "I thought not," and moved on. She'd been planning this cruise for close to a year. Celebrity Cruise Lines. New Year's Eve, saving out of Fort Lauderdale. The big one. The ship with the multiple pools, and the specialty restaurants, and the entertainment package. $2,200 a ticket. Tickets purchased. 6. Margot, Crispin, Thessaly, Cordelia. Margot's sister Eulalia, who goes by Leah, and who has the specific energy of someone who has prepared a list of grievances about you before you've done anything. And Eulalia's husband Barnabas, who I genuinely liked from the first moment I met him, and who seemed, consistently, like a man who had wandered into his own life and was doing his best. 6 tickets. 2 people short. Not 1, not 3, exactly 2. The precise number of my children. I did not find out from Margot. I found out from Waverly, who found out from Thessaly, who had mentioned it at school the way you'd mentioned that the cafeteria switched pizza brands. Very casual. We're going on a cruise for New Year's. We can't bring Waverly and Ollie because there's no room. My 9-year-old daughter came home on a Tuesday afternoon, sat at the kitchen table, and asked me, very carefully, what no room on a cruise ship meant, but that she'd looked it up, and cruise ships seemed very big. I sat with that information for 3 days. 3 full days. I watched Margot pack her carry-on. I watched Crispin asked me if I could pick up his dry cleaning before the trip. I watched Thessaly, who is 14 and more perceptive than anyone in that house gave her credit for, watch me in a way that told me she knew something was wrong and didn't know what to do with that. On the 3rd day, Margot brought it up in the kitchen. Very breezy, very prepared. The version where she'd already had the conversation in her head and was now delivering the summary. You know, the cruise is really going to be family-focused. Lots of inside stuff. You and the kids would probably be bored. Better to do your own thing for New Year's. And then Crispin walked through, didn't even pause, opened the fridge, grabbed something, said the $2,200 line on his way back out, and I just stood there. I said, "Yeah, you're probably right." She looked briefly surprised that it had gone so smoothly. Then she went back to whatever she was doing. I put my hands flat on the kitchen counter. I looked out the window at the backyard where Waverly had left her bicycle. I thought about a 9-year-old, and a paper crown, and 3 weeks of believing she was going on a cruise for New Year's. Something shifted inside me. Not heat, the opposite of heat, just cold, clear, done. That night, after both kids were asleep, I went to my desk, and I opened my laptop. I looked up Celebrity Cruise Lines. I found the specific sailing. It wasn't hard. I had the pamphlet Margot had left on the kitchen table months ago. The one where I'd noticed that were 6 names and not 8. I found the booking, and then I made a phone call. The next morning, from my office, between a 9 o'clock contact lens fitting and a 10:30 glaucoma screening. I called the cruise line. Ove. So, here's the part of the story where I need you to not judge me. Or judge me. Honestly, at this point, judge freely. I've thought about it from every angle, and I have arrived at a place of complete, untroubled peace with what I did next. I want to be very clear that I am a calm, reasonable person. What happened next was calm. It was reasonable. It was simply reasonable in a register that I had not previously accessed. Here's what I learned from the cruise line. When I called, Celebrity does not typically sell out all passenger capacity months in advance on New Year's sailings. There is almost always remaining inventory. This particular sailing had cabins available. Not a lot, but some. 12 available berths across 5 cabins, to be precise, because the very helpful reservations agent named Caitlin in Fort Lauderdale was extremely forthcoming. Once I explained that I was looking to book multiple cabins for a large group, I said, "How many can you sell, Qley?" There was a brief pause. She said, "All 12 if you want them." I thought about it for approximately 4 seconds. I said, "I want them. Now. Do I need 12 additional berths on a cruise ship? No. Do I have 12 additional people to put in those berths? I did not, at that moment, have 12 people. Did I buy the berths anyway and then work backwards? I did. I want to explain my thinking, which was, if I buy 2 cabins for me and my children, I have made my point quietly and privately, which is fine but does not quite scale to the situation. If I buy the remaining inventory, all of it, specific in all of it, then a cruise ship that was full becomes a cruise ship on which every seat that was not already taken by Margot's family is occupied by people I love. This felt, to me, proportionate, not cruel, not harmful. Just an accurate reflection of what happens when you don't count correctly. I also want to tell you that at the moment I said, "I want them," I heard myself and I thought, this is slightly unhinged. I noted this. I proceeded anyway. I called Alistair Quince first. He has been my best friend since we were both terrified first years at the same dental and optometry conference where we'd accidentally been seated next to each other and bonded over the mutual horror of small talk. He's been my person for 12 years. He and his wife Phoebe are the people I called when Genevieve and I split. When the practice almost didn't make it in year 3, when my dad got sick. He answers every time. He picked up on the second ring. I said, "Are you and Phoebe doing anything for New Year's?" He said, "Not particularly." I said, "How do you feel about a cruise?" He was quiet. Then he said, "Dominic, what did you do?" Not a question, a statement. He knows Neve very well. I said, "Nothing yet. I need you to say yes first." He said, "Yes," without hesitation. Then, "Phoebe is going to need at least 3 days to pack." I said that was fine. I had 11 days. My cousin Odessa was next. Odessa is 32, lives in Durham, works in marketing, and is the kind of person who makes every situation more alive just by entering it. She has the chaos energy that I, as a very organized optometrist, do not possess but deeply appreciate in other people. When I called and explained the broad outline of the situation, the 6 tickets, my children, the $2,200 comment, and the fact that I had just purchased all remaining cabin inventory on a New Year's cruise ship, she said, without missing a beat, "Give me a cabin number. I'll pack tonight." Then I called Ruben Ashcroft. Ruben and I went to UNC together. He's 6'4", has the energy of a golden retriever who has just learned that you own a ball and is pathologically incapable of not enjoying himself. He's been telling me for 2 years that I needed to stop being so patient with this situation. He said that multiple times, out loud. I did not listen. When I told him what was happening, he went silent for about 5 seconds. And then he said, "You bought the whole boat." I said, "Not the whole boat, just the remaining capacity." He said, "You bought the whole boat." Then he said he would bring his girlfriend, Florentine, who I had met twice and who seemed absolutely wonderful, and I said perfect, and he said he was going to document every single moment of this on his phone. I told him to be discreet. He said, "Sure." I should have defined discreet at that point. I did not. Over the next 4 days, I filled those cabins. My old colleague from optometry school, Wendell Fitch, and his husband Arlo. Odessa's friend Marveline, who I'd met at Odessa's birthday, and who had the kind of laugh that makes other people laugh before they know it's funny. And 2 cabins, one for me and Waverly and Ollie, one I genuinely left empty, because there were a certain number of tickets I had purchased on principle, and I was not going to compromise that number. Waverly, when I told her we were going on a cruise for New Year's, stared at me for about 4 full seconds. Then she said, "What about the no room?" I told her there was room now. She thought about this. She said, "Did you find room, or did you make room?" And I said, "Both, kind of." She nodded very seriously, like that answered something important, and went to go pick out which suitcase she wanted. She chose the one with the palm tree on it, obviously. We drove to Fort Lauderdale on the 27th. Me, Waverly, Ollie, Alistair, Phoebe, and Odessa. In a rented minivan that Alistair drove with great enthusiasm and questionable lane discipline. Ruben and Florentine flew. Wendell and Arlo drove separately. Marveline took the train to Miami and met us there. The ship departed December 30th. Boarding started at noon for priority passengers. Our group was fully checked in and on the Lido deck by 1:30 p.m. Margot's family had a 5:15 boarding window. I know this because it was on the original 6-person itinerary she'd printed and left on the kitchen counter months ago, which I had quietly photographed with my phone at some point and then never quite deleted. It told me, boarding Group C, Terminal 3, 5:15 p.m. At 5:12, I was on the Lido deck. I had a gin and tonic. Waverly had a mocktail with a little paper umbrella, which she had specifically requested, and which the bartender had delivered with great ceremony. Ollie was leaning on the railing next to me, with the studied casualness of a 12-year-old who is actually extremely interested in what's happening, but refuses to admit it. Alistair and Phoebe were to my left. Ruben had already taken approximately 200 photos. Odessa was somewhere nearby, having befriended 3 couples she'd never met before. I saw them before they saw us. Margot, Cordelia, Eulalia, Barnabas, Crispin, Thessaly. Walking up toward the terminal from the parking structure. Margot was wheeling a very large suitcase in a very confident way. Cordelia was in a wide-brimmed hat and something expensive in ivory. Crispin had AirPods in. Thessaly was looking at her phone. Barnabas was carrying too many bags with the specific defeated efficiency of a man who has done this many times. Waverly saw them before I pointed. She straightened up. She looked at me. I looked at her. I said very quietly, "Wave, baby." And my daughter, construction paper crown nowhere in sight, replaced by actual child-sized sunglasses she'd picked out at a rest stop in South Carolina, leaned over the railing and waved with her whole arm. Margot looked up. I have thought about the expression on her face many times since then. I've tried to describe it to Alistair, to Odessa, to Precious at my office. To Alistair, again, the closest I can get is, it was the face of someone whose mental model of the next 5 days had just encountered a significant revision. In real time, in public, on a dock. Confusion first, then recognition. Then the beginning of something that wasn't quite an emotion yet but was clearly on its way to becoming one. I raised my gin and tonic. Just slightly. The way you'd raise a glass at a toast. "Happy New Year," I said. "Looks like you're the one staying home." Now, they were not staying home. I want to be accurate. They had tickets. They boarded. They were on the ship. I want to be completely clear that I did not strand anyone. I did not cancel anyone's reservation. I did not do anything that could in any real sense be described as harmful. What I did was purchase all the remaining available inventory, which meant that every deck chair, every dinner reservation upgrade, every specialty restaurant slot, and every premium poolside seating package that had not already been claimed was mine. Claimed by one Dominic Calloway, an optometrist from Raleigh. Did they notice? Yes. In stages. Like a very specific kind of unwrapping. The first thing they noticed was the pool deck situation. About 25 minutes after boarding, while I was getting Waverly settled into our cabin, and Ollie was immediately investigating the TV, Cordelia went to the adults-only pool deck. The premium one. The one with the personal cabana service and the waiter who brings you things without being asked. To reserve seating for the week. Standard move. Reasonable instinct, experienced cruiser. Every premium reserve chair was tagged. Little placard. Reserved. Callaway party. I was not at that pool. Not once. I was at a completely different pool of my children and a group of people I actually wanted to spend New Year's Eve with. But those chairs sat there. All of them. Tagged. All week. according to Barnabas, who would later become my unlikely source for the complete timeline of events. This was the moment Eulalia got on her phone. She called Margot. Margot called me. I did not pick up. I was watching Waverly and Ollie and Ruben, having a shuffleboard tournament on the sports deck. Ruben was coaching them with the full intensity of an NCAA recruiter. Waverly was waiting on pure aggression. Ollie had gotten competitive in a way he usually reserves for video games, and was giving Ruben extremely detailed strategic feedback. I put my phone face down on a deck chair. 14 missed calls. I counted them later, at 8:30 p.m., when we were filing into the ship's comedy show, and Odessa was already laughing at something the comedian hadn't finished saying yet. 14 calls, across 4 numbers. Margot, Eulalia, Crispin, and 1. From a number I didn't recognize that turned out, days later, to be Cordelia's landline that she'd somehow activated through some cellular arrangement I didn't know she had. The texts. Oh, the texts. Margot, 6:04 p.m. Dominic, I think we need to have a conversation about what you're doing right now and what you think it accomplishes. Crispin, 6:47 p.m. This is really immature, and my mom is upset, and I don't think you understand how this looks. Eulalia, 7:12 p.m. I don't know what you think this proves, but we have welcomed you into this family with open arms, and this is deeply disrespectful, and I am floored Dominic. Barnabas, 7:15 p.m. Hey, so, are you on the ship? I responded to exactly one of these. Hi Barnabas, yes, he said back. Okay. Then, the thing I genuinely did not plan for. Ruben has Instagram. Ruben is good at Instagram in the way that certain people are good at things that look effortless, but clearly require a specific kind of talent. He'd been posting cruise content since we boarded. Nothing inflammatory, just our group, having a good time, the ship, the ocean, Waverly's mocktail, Ollie reluctantly smiling at something. Good content. Normal content. At 9:14 p.m., he posted a video. Our dinner table. All of us. The table was full and loud and warm. Marveline had everyone crying, laughing over a story about a rental car in Atlanta. Alistair had managed to acquire an entire cheese board through a means none of us fully understood. Waverly was wearing a paper party hat that the restaurant had provided, and was explaining to Arlo with complete seriousness the correct procedure for blowing a party horn. Ruben had gotten it all on video. 15 seconds. Good lighting. The caption, Mike White Dominic said not enough room. Sir, you bought the rubes. He posted it at 9:14 p.m. By 11:40 p.m., when Odessa turned her phone around to show me, that video had been screenshot and posted in a Facebook group called Family, Mess, and Tea, Support Group for Survivors, which has, it turns out, 412,000 members, by someone who had apparently done enough research from Ruben's public profile to understand the general outline of the situation, and had captioned it, so apparently this man found out his fiancée left his kids off a family cruise. His response, drop your jaw in the comments. 412,000 members. By midnight, the post had 2,300 comments. By the time we were on the deck, watching the countdown fireworks at midnight, with Waverly, sitting on my shoulders because she couldn't see over the railing, and Ollie standing next to me with his arms crossed and a very small smile that he thought I hadn't noticed. The post had been shared 417 times. I found out the number at 12:17 a.m. because Odessa, who is absolutely in that Facebook group and who has also never explained this to my satisfaction, was reading comments out loud to me with increasing delight. Some of them, for the record, he's an optometrist and he helped them see their mistake from the deck. I am not well. The empty chair at the premium pool, specifically being reserved in his name, while he's at a completely different pool with his kids, is the most elegant thing I've ever heard. This man filed an appeal with the cruise line, and the cruise line said yes. And now we're all here. The little girl on his shoulders in the fireworks video is going to tell this story at his retirement party, and I will be there somehow. Wait, is this a real family, or is this a Netflix pitch? because either way, I am invested. At 1:14 a.m., I received the direct message from Barnabas, not in the group thread, just Barnabas, to me. It said, "I want you to know I have been in the ship's bathroom for 22 minutes. Eulalia thinks I have food poisoning. I do not have food poisoning. I found the Facebook group. I genuinely cannot stop. I need a few more minutes." At 1:47 a.m., Odessa sent me a screenshot of a comment from someone named Dolores T. A stranger, a complete stranger, somebody who had never met a single person in this situation, and never would, who had written, "This is why you always count seats before you count people out." 412,000 members. And Dolores T. understood the assignment. I should tell you about the chairs at the adults-only pool, because there is a specific additional detail that I did not plan, and that became, in my opinion, the funniest part of the whole thing. On day 2, I went to the pool deck, not the premium one, just a regular pool, and I ran into Wendell and Arlo, who had discovered that the premium poolside bubbler service had been coming by the reserved Callaway chairs all morning, bringing drinks to empty chairs, and then taking them away again, and then coming back an hour later with fresh ones. Because that's what you do when chairs are reserved. You service them. Wendell, who has a very dry sense of humor and who I love, said, "There's a mojito sitting out an empty chair over there, with your name on it." He paused. Literally. The napkin says, Callaway. I went and looked. There was, in fact, a cocktail napkin with Callaway written on it in the bubbler's handwriting, sitting under a complimentary tropical drink, on a chair where no one was sitting, next to 11 other such chairs, all attended to, all empty, all generating small moments of confused but professional service all day. Cordelia reportedly spent 45 minutes trying to get those chairs untagged and made available to her family. She was told, politely but firmly, that reserved seating is reserved seating, and the Callaway party had the right to use or not use them as they chose. She asked if they could sit in the empty chairs anyway. She was told that was the Callaway party's decision to make. According to Barnabas, Cordelia actually looked up from this exchange, scanned the visible deck areas, saw me and my group at the other pool having what appeared to be an excellent time, and then turned back to the desk agent and said, with remarkable composure, "I see." Just those 2 words. I see. I feel like Cordelia, at that moment, saw several things at once. The confrontation happened on the morning of the second day. Not by design, these things find their own location. I was in the buffet line, specifically at the made-to-order omelet station, which is the worst place to be when someone wants to have a tense conversation, because you are both standing still and socially obligated to remain standing still until your omelet is ready. Margot appeared next to me. She was controlled. That's the word. Controlled the way a person is controlled when they have been working very hard not to say things all night, and are now rationing carefully. She said, very quietly, "What did you think this would accomplish?" I thought about the question. I thought about it genuinely, not strategically. What did I think it would accomplish? I thought about Waverly and the paper crown. I thought about a 9-year-old asking what no room on a cruise ship meant. I thought about 8 months of groceries and a car payment and a football kit, and 14 missed calls. I said, "My kids are on a cruise for New Year's." She said, "That's not what I'm asking." I said, "I know. But that's the answer I have." She left. The omelet chef, who had been performing the extraordinary professional feat of making omelets while completely not registering the conversation happening 2 feet from his station, handed me a plate and said quietly, "Mushrooms and Swiss, sir?" I said, "Thank you." Yes. I ate that omelet at a table with Alistair and Phoebe, who had the decency to not ask questions, and I looked out at the ocean, which was a color of blue that doesn't quite exist anywhere else, and I thought, yeah, okay, this was the right call. Barnabas found me on the pool deck on day 2, around 3 in the afternoon. He sat down in a chair next to me without any preamble, which is very Barnabas. He's not a man who needs a lot of conversational remoulade. He's one of those people who thinks carefully and then says exactly the thing and then stops. He sat and he looked at the water for a minute, and then he said, "Eulalia has been doing this to Cordelia for 15 years. The same pattern. Whoever carries the weight doesn't get a seat at the table. Whoever pays doesn't get to decide. It's the family logic. Margot grew up inside it. She doesn't even see it anymore. I looked at him. He said, "You're the first person in 2 years who refused to perform the part they cast you in. And I genuinely don't know what to do with that." He paused. "I'm sorry it took 2 years for somebody to say it out loud," he said. "I should have said it sooner. I didn't. That's on me." He got up, he went to the bar, he came back with 2 beers. He handed me one. We watched the water for another 20 minutes without speaking. A kid in a floaty drifted past. Seabirds did something complicated over a wave. I've thought about what Barnabas said many times since then, the thing about the part they cast me in. I think he's right. I think I showed up ready to be a partner and a stepfather and a steady presence. And somewhere along the way, not through any one dramatic decision, but through 1,000 small convenient ones, I got cast as the infrastructure. The financial backbone, who didn't require acknowledgement, because infrastructure never does. I'm done being infrastructure. I can be a foundation and have my name on the door at the same time. The unexpected thing happened on New Year's Day morning, 7:30 a.m. I was out on my cabin balcony with coffee. The ocean was flat and pink, the way it gets right after sunrise when the light hasn't fully committed to being daytime yet. It was very quiet. The ship was doing that particular gentle movement that makes you understand why people find being on the ocean peaceful. Someone knocked on my cabin door. It was Thessaly. She's 14. She was 12 when I entered her life. Quiet, watchful, keeping her own counsel. Not unfriendly. Just evaluating, like she had a list of things she was checking for, and she wasn't going to announce the list or the results. I'd respected that. I tried not to push. I tried to be present without being demanding about it, which is a hard balance, and I'm sure I didn't always get it right. She asked if she could sit with me. I said of course. She wrapped her arms around her knees, the way teenagers do when they're thinking through something. We watched the water for a minute. Then she said, "Waverly told me you do this for them all the time." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, just make things okay, without making a whole thing out of it. I didn't know exactly what to say to that. She said, "My dad doesn't really do things like that." I said, carefully, "I'm sure he loves you." She shrugged, not dismissively, thoughtfully. "Yeah, it's just different." We sat there until 8:15. We didn't talk much more. Just the ocean and the coffee and this 14-year-old who had apparently been watching me for 2 years and making her own notes. When she got up to go find Crispin, she paused at the balcony door and said, "Thank you for the crows." Quiet, specific, like she'd been deciding whether to say it. That broke something open in my chest. The good way, the kind of break that lets something through. Are we a perfect family now? No, not even close. Margot and I had a real conversation, a long one, the kind that doesn't wrap up in one night. It took 3 separate evenings over the week after we got back. And there are things that are still being worked through, slowly, with imperfect honesty on both sides. She acknowledged, eventually, that 2 tickets short wasn't a logistical mistake. She didn't say it with those exact words. Margot doesn't use exact words when approximate ones are available. But she said enough. She said she'd been afraid of what it meant to fully integrate my children into her family's version of things. She said she hadn't figured out how to say that, so she just not said anything. And let a decision get made that she knew, if she looked at it directly, wasn't right. That's not a full accounting, but it's something. And I've said my own imperfect things too. I told her that I'd been paying into a situation without ever demanding to be a full participant in it. That I'd been performing patience as a virtue when it was actually a way of avoiding conflict. That I should have had the conversation about the groceries in month 4, not month 14. None of that is fun to say, but it's accurate. Crispin, the $2,200 comment, he texted me on New Year's night. I don't know if Margot suggested it, but it didn't read like something someone told him to do. It read like someone who had been on a ship for 2 days and had watched me with my kids, and was 17 and not quite as arm-lead as he'd like to be. The text said, "That wasn't a cool thing to say. I'm sorry. Full stop. No excuses attached." He's 17. That took something from them. I texted back, I appreciate that. Thank you. We're not going to be best friends. That's not the deal. But we're going to be okay, I think. Cordelia sent Waverly a birthday card 2 months later with a $50 bill in it. No note. Just the card and the bill. Waverly showed it to me with the very reasonable 9-year-old question. Who is Cordelia Pemberton? I told her it was someone who was trying to do better. Waverly said, oh, did she used to be mean? I said, she was sometimes complicated. Waverly said, that's the same as mean, but politely. She's 9. She's right. Ollie, for his part, described the cruise afterward as actually kind of okay. He said this while eating cereal and not looking at me. From Ollie, actually kind of okay is a standing ovation. And Waverly, last Saturday she found me at my desk doing practice billing, the least glamorous part of being a practice owner, and she climbed into the chair next to mine and said, Daddy, did you know the cruise ships have to go back? Like they can't just stay out there? I said I did know that. She thought about it. She said, but we could go again? I said yes, we absolutely could. She nodded, satisfied, the way she nods when something has been settled to her satisfaction. Yeah, we could go again. And next time, I'll count the seats myself.